Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good, Jamie. It's a good day in the neighborhood.
I'm good. I'm good. Before we get into the first of the few topics and the intro stuff, a little bit of a warning, Logan. You're botting out a bit. Don't know if you've got something downloading or connection issues or whatever. But yeah, it's been an interesting week. There's been a ton of news stories. There's been a lot of games announced and new release dates for stuff that was there at Gamescom. A lot of Gamescom news. It's been a really good week, and I'd say for the majority, it's a lot of really good news, which I'm always happy to see in an industry where I think people focus way too much on the negative. So that's good to see. But yeah, before we get into all of it, Logan, have you been playing anything interesting?
Well, I just beat Quake 2 and its first expansion. About to start on the second expansion. Really enjoying Quake. And I started Everspace 2 today, and I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, that's a very good game. Uh, I have to say, it doesn't control like most of the flight games because in like most spaceship games or basically a game where you have a plane, almost everything controls the same. But in Chorus and in Everspace, you actually have to control it like a first-person shooter. Did you notice that?
Yeah, like there's lots of roll and, your shoulder buttons for thrust and inventory and like for gear like on the D-pad, and it does feel like a first person shooter now that you mention it.
Before we continue, I just saw Shane G in chat mention what's happening with Starfield on Twitter. Oh, we're going to get into all that stuff later. Like I said, it's going to be a fun show. And we never normally make fun of the clowns on the podcast because I like to keep it a bit more professional. And even though this week there will be a hell of a lot less swearing because YouTube doesn't like that, it's going to be fun. But yeah, Everspace, it's a great game. The left stick strafes, the right stick aims, and it just works. I think it's a game that a lot of people have to try out because it's the one genre I think we don't get much of anymore. Like the space combat game kind of died back in the PlayStation 1 generation. We got things like Colony Wars, and then every generation after that we just got less and less games. I can't even think of I think we have a connection issue here. Okay, it seems to be working again. Yeah, YouTube's acting up. It's been all weird all week. Anyway, if audio's okay, please let me know in chat. But yeah, we'll continue. Um, huh. This is weird. It is acting up a bit. Uh, just checking down. Okay, we're back. YouTube has been acting up all week, and it's YouTube just acting up. Anyway, Everspace 2 is a game that we don't get a lot. I can't think of a single 3D space combat game we got on the Xbox 360. Like, Logan, can you think of any?
Last game I played like this that was, somewhat similar would be Velocity 2 and Resogun, but they're very different from what this game is seeking to do. I haven't played Corvus yet, but I have it. I want to play it. But as far as the closest things to these, it would probably be Resogun and Velocity 2. But Velocity 2, you could exit out of your ship and, run around and play like Samus. So a little different, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, like when you're done with Everspace, I highly recommend Chorus. It plays basically the same, but to have like an open space RPG where you can just basically do what you want. There's fleet battles, there's missions that just involve carrying packages across space. There's an economy in game, so if one space station requests something like alcohol or medical kits, you have to fly to a different spaceport to buy them and come back. And it's just really cool. I think the developers came out and said that they've been able to make the game they wanted to make because of Game Pass, and you can see that. Like, it's a very ambitious game. It's a next gen only game, and they've been talking about this game for years. It was announced, I think, in 2018, something like that, and they've been just building on it ever since. And what they've made is pretty unique, and I think everyone, especially if you have Game Pass, please play it. It's incredible. From what I can tell, it's going to take me about 80 hours to finish because I love the side content. But yeah, other than that, I've been playing Sea of Stars. Now that game is good. That game is very good. And I think it's one of the few games, or it might be the first game that's launched simultaneously in Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, or now, or whatever the service is called, at the exact same time. So that's big for the developer. This is their second game, and it's incredible. Like, if you loved games from the SNES generation, where you had these 16-bit JRPGs with a lot of personality and character, you're going to love this. The cool thing about this is that there's no grinding in the game. You just play the game from start to finish. There's no backtracking and having to repeat content, and I think that's a big problem with JRPGs for a lot of people. It's the grinding, right? I love Final Fantasy X, but I hate the fact that when I go back to it or wanting to replay it, I'm going to have to spend hours grinding to get past certain enemies. But with this, there's none of that. There's none of that at all. Logan, have you played it yet? Outside of the demo?
I haven't yet, but it's on my list. I'm super excited for that. And then Chained Echoes is another one that is kind of a Super Nintendo era type RPG renovated, and it's in Game Pass as well. That looks and has received well. So definitely want to play both of them. Can't wait.
Yeah, like Sea of Stars, I think if people are new to JRPGs or they've been put off from like playing them, I think it's something people have to play. Like, it is a fun game. The soundtrack is really good, and it has a lot of quality of life features. So there's an item you can activate where, and you get it about an hour into the game, I say, where if you activate this item, you can literally have it so every time you finish a battle, your health completely restores to 100%. And apparently it doesn't affect any achievements, so I think people will like to turn that on if they want a little bit of an easier ride. But like I said, there's no grinding. It's one of the reasons why I push Crisis Core Remake a lot, because you can play that from start to finish without grinding. And what a breath of fresh air. It really is. But yeah. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I also finished Bramble. That's it's very much like Inside, but it's disgusting. Again, it's in Game Pass. We get a lot of cool things in Game Pass, but yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. Been playing a little bit of Red Dead Redemption. But yeah, let's get into the main topics because we have a lot to go over today. Now, Logan, you put this in chat and I saw it last week, and I think it's a pretty cool thing, is that Zack Snyder wants to do a Gears of War movie. Now, one, I think that's incredible. I've never really thought about who could direct a Gears of War movie. I just thought it'll be something that'll never happen. But I've never put together Zack Snyder and Gears, and I think that would work so well. And the fact that he mentioned it, and, you know, he's not doing the DC stuff anymore, and Rebel Moon Part 2 is already filmed, I think it's something we could see. What do you think?
I would love it. I think it's right up his alley, and the fact that he has already worked with Dave Bautista, and they seem to have a good relationship, at least on the surface. They've done Army of the Dead together. They've both worked with Netflix together. Netflix, I believe, has film rights. I know they have at least the series rights for, like, anime or whatever. If they also have the movie rights, then it seems like a lot of boxes are already checked. And then plus his kind of gritty, darker tone on things and his set pieces, it just seems like a good mix. He also mentioned Halo as one he would like to do as well. He said Halo or Gears, but Gears probably more so. He said Halo's kind of being done right now, referencing the show, which, you know, people either love or hate or kind of about. But I think him and Gears would be a good mix, especially with Dave Bautista thrown in.
Yeah, I just like to see something sooner rather than later, because the problem with video game projects getting adaptations is that sometimes we go years without seeing them, and then they just never happen. We saw that with Steven Spielberg's Halo series. There was going to be a Halo film back in the day, and that turned into District 9. There was going to be a Bioshock movie, which never happened, and apparently now there's going to be a Bioshock film at Netflix. So it's all up in the air. We don't know if things will happen, but like, doesn't Universal have rights to do a a Gears of War movie, and Netflix is doing a Gears series as well?
I think it is. The more I think about it, that Netflix has the series rights for like anime and maybe a different show, and then Universal has the film. But I don't know 100% off the top of my head.
Yeah, but like I said, all these video game things, they all up in the air. I just hope we see something because over the past decade, this has turned into a film podcast, but we'll be doing in a minute. But like Hollywood's been obsessed with superhero movies for the past 15 years now, almost. And now, like I've been saying for years, I think Hollywood is creatively bankrupt. Like it's all remakes. Comic book movies are coming out all the time. The past few years, in general, at the cinema hasn't done like that well at all. Like everyone can see that the cinema industry is kind of crumbling, and I think it's the lack of original ideas. So what's an original idea to a Hollywood executive? Adapt video games. And we're seeing that all the time now. The Last of Us got a TV series. Halo got a TV series. Gears of War is probably going to get an anime. Like Castlevania's an anime. There's new anime coming out. Cyberpunk Edge Runners was a thing, which was amazing, by the way. And I think over the next decade, we're going to see like just a ridiculous amount of video game adaptations because they can't keep rinsing the whole comic book genre. And so the only things left for Hollywood to adapt are video games and anime. And we've seen in the past, they can't adapt anime. They tried with Dragon Ball Evolution. Logan, have you ever seen that?
No, and they're with good reason.
Yeah. Don't watch it. It. In fact, I think it's only good if you watch it when you're drunk with friends. Outside of that, it has
3 a.m.
Yeah,
just
like
for laughs. Yeah,
it has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. I do think the Ghost in the Shell film was really good, but outside of that, like it's all adaptations. Where am I going with this? This is a gaming podcast mainly about Xbox. Gears of War. I would love to see Zack Snyder on a Gears of War film. Hopefully it happens this decade. And Dave Bautista has to be involved. Like, I think when it comes to an IP like this or a video game IP in general, if you have an actor that loves the IP, it's going to be better for it. You know, we've all seen what Henry Cavill's like with The Witcher. You know, he's been passionate about that IP for so long that on set, apparently he was annoying the writers trying to correct them what Geralt would do in a certain situation. But again, that's a topic for another day. Anyway, I'd love to see it. You know what? I may as well bring this up now because I'm going to rant a bit. So, Halo's been around since, 2001. It's basically the reason why we have Xbox at the minute. And if it wasn't for Halo, Xbox wouldn't really be a thing. And I think everyone knows that. Halo and Xbox kind of go hand in hand. And over the years, Halo's been on an up and down slide. Me personally, I stepped away from multiplayer in general, like that be Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, just in general, years ago. And now I'm slowly getting back into Call of Duty multiplayer, mainly because one of my mates plays it still. But like for me, Halo is purely single player. That's just how it is now. But as I'm saying lately, Halo is picking up when it comes to multiplayer. But I saw the worst take I've ever seen when it comes to Halo today. Logan, did you see this particular take?
No, I was distracted by Eurogamer crying, so I missed that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that in a bit. So, Ryan McCaffrey from IGN.
Oh gosh.
Okay. had the worst Halo take I've ever seen in my entire life. I've been online since Halo was a thing. I've seen a lot of bad Halo takes, especially this past decade. People wanting 343 to be, fired, have the team work on something else. But there's been all sorts of takes, Sprint ruins Halo, everything. We can talk about this all day. Anyway, where am I going with this? Ryan McCaffrey's worst Halo take, or to say the worst Halo take I've ever seen online, is this. Oh, excuse me. We have the first super chat of the day by Mock Student 4364 for, is that CZK check. Sorry if I don't know what currency that is, but thank you very much for the 50 CZK. He says, "Hi guys. So how much are you hyped for Starfield? I probably never have this much hype for a game before. Extremely. Like, look, the reason why a lot of people are hyped about this game, Starfield, is because it's an event game. We never see these games that often, right? We get a GTA once every generation plus now. We've had the same Grand Theft Auto for 3 generations now. Red Dead Redemption was the last event title, where everyone stops talking about anything else and it's all about that. And you know what? I'll throw Elden Ring in there. People online came together and talked about Elden Ring and celebrated Elden Ring for about 3 months straight, and it was an amazing time online. But outside of that, like, you basically have Bethesda's single player RPGs. You have basically anything made by Rockstar, and that's it. So to have a new Bethesda RPG, that's a brand new IP, and it's a space exploration game in an industry that's plagued with nothing but fantasy games. I've whined about this a lot on the podcast and in videos on my channel. Like, we get 50 fantasy games for every one sci-fi game. And if people follow me enough, you may notice that I kind of like Mass Effect. I kind of do, right? Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. And like, I'm obsessed with it because I was introduced to this new sci-fi universe in 2007. And I loved it since. I think it's the best sci-fi intellectual property to me. It's different from Star Trek, which I love Star Trek. It's different from Star Wars, and I love Star Wars. It's like completely different. And this is a new universe. And I could not be more hyped for this if I tried. And personally, I'm counting down the days for I was going to say Stargate for some reason. I love Stargate as well. But I'm counting down the days for Starfield because it's literally a once-in-a-generation game. It really is. Logan, like, you're obviously looking forward to this game. Like, the hype for you is pretty high, right?
Oh, yes. I haven't been this hyped for a game. I know this is going to date me a little bit, but I haven't been this hyped for a game since, Halo 3 Midnight Launch or Skyrim back in 2011. Like, this is like a generational experience type game. And, I'm all in, got all the Starfield stuff I can find. I missed out on the journal, but, waiting for the postman to bring Constellation Edition. Hopefully it shows up on time. If not, might have to double dip on the premium upgrade. I'm waiting with bated breath to jump into space. And, hopefully walk on one of those gas giants, am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. We will be talking about that in a bit. Like, oh wow. But yeah, thank you very much for the first super chat of the day by Mock Student 4364. What we were talking about? Oh yeah, Halo. So the worst Halo take of all time. Look, I'll get over my whole thing with Ryan McCaffrey first, because I used to like Ryan McCaffrey. I used to basically listen to his podcast for KOXM, which was the official Xbox magazine podcast. And then when he went to IGN, I started watching IGN's content, because before then I never really paid attention to it. Anyway, me and him had a back and forth on Twitter about the Kinect adapter. I made a point that IGN made a bigger fuss about the Kinect adapter than the PlayStation VR cables, which stuck out at the front of the console. And I liked the post. Someone said, "Oh, Jamie destroyed you." I liked it, and then he blocked me. And that's that, But I saw this post in my feed today, and I was shocked. Like, I've never seen a Halo take this bad. And it was, with all the turnover and everything that's been going over at 343, Halo needs to be rebooted. That is the worst take I've ever heard in my entire life. Because Halo's been going through this up and down slope, but Halo Infinite had this consistent story pace, and we see what Halo's story is trying to be now. Going from 4 to 5 to now Infinite. Like, we know what they're trying to do. And then after everything, after all the turmoil and everything that the community's gone through, he suggests that it should be rebooted. And I hope 343 and Microsoft does not listen to this, they do not need to reboot Halo. They need to make a good Halo, continue making Halo, and make Halo the best thing it can be. Because I don't think resetting the clock every time people are dissatisfied with the product, I think that's a bad way to go about it. Look at DC, right? We're talking a lot about films today, but look at DC. DC fan base is in turmoil at the minute. You have the fan base that like the Snyderverse. You have the fan base that don't like anything. You have the fan base that wants to tear down any film that isn't made by Marvel. And you have this small group that are looking forward towards James Gunn's films, right? And there's this massive clash online, and Halo fans online argue all the time. And if this happened, a reboot, I think it would tear apart the community unlike anything we've ever seen before. Logan, like, what do you think of that?
Well, I would compare it to like this opens up a whole nother Pandora's box, but so we can kind of sidestep it a little bit. But basically, like you remember when Disney bought Star Wars and they kind of just pulled the plug on EU, like the 20 plus years of expanded universe. And
Yeah.
then, like, well, we'll, cherry pick things here and there to re put into canon or spin it a different way or reboot it or just avoid it so we can just have a clean slate, whatever. Like basically it would be the equivalent of that. Like there's 20 plus years of lore. Like people forget that Halo isn't just the game series. There's also the anime, there's the films, there's the series, like it or not. There's all these books, graphic novels, like all this huge, intensive lore and stuff that is really intensive and deep. And it's one thing to reboot a game stylistically, like go, okay, God of War is a action hack and slash, kind of third person over the shoulder type, you know, experience, and we're going to change it into more of a Last of Us styled, narrative heavy, focused exploration, what Sony's really good at. So, like, that's one thing to reboot stylistically. But if you wanted to actually completely reboot it and pull the plug and restart, I just do not think that would be received well. And saying that from a Halo community is saying something.
Yeah, like I've loved Halo since day one. I look, if people only have to follow me and talk to me for like 5 seconds to know that I love Mass Effect. I talk about it every day. I love Mass Effect almost. I say I screwed it up again. I love Halo almost just as much. I just never talk about it because no matter what my opinion is or thought is on Halo, people get angry, and it just is what it is. It's a thing with sci-fi in general. Like Star Trek, like I won't even go into it, but like the Star Trek fan base was split for about an entirety of like 10 years, up until like 2019 or whatever. But like, there's always these like weird like things between the fan. Anyway, where am I going with this? A Halo reboot wouldn't do anything. You're right. Like, look at God of War, right? They did a quote unquote soft reboot just by changing the genre, kind of, and it kind of worked for them. It's continuing the story forward. I'm not saying Microsoft needs to do that, but I think just hard resetting Halo is probably the worst decision Microsoft could ever do. But yeah, but the thing is, it's always people at these big media outlets that have these bad takes. And maybe it's because maybe he wants traction, maybe he genuinely thinks that, but I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. Anyway, before we continue, we have another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for the $4.99. He says, Sea of Stars is excellent. That it is. I've got footage on the screen right now. It takes me back to being a kid a little bit, because even though I didn't have a Super Nintendo as a child, if you had a Sega console, like you weren't getting JRPGs that often. So it kind of just reminds me of going over to a friend's house and seeing like JRPGs there, and it's really cool. The art style, everything about it. It's modern while still feeling like it came from the 90s. I think it being in Game Pass and PlayStation Plus now or whatever it's called, like it's going to open up the game to so many more people, and the fact that it's the studio's very second title. I can't wait to see what they make in the future. The developers did say in the documentary, which is free on YouTube, by the way, that they are interested in making a game that's reminiscent of the games we saw from the PlayStation 1 generation, which interests me because it's a visual style we don't see anymore. I think you could do a modern take on the PlayStation 1 visual style. Like Logan, you played that horror game, right? Where it's basically a PlayStation 1 game, yeah?
Oh yeah, like I love retro style games, and especially in the horror genre.
Yeah, there's some good stuff to be had there. But yeah, thank you very much for the super chat, Nick W. But yeah, Halo, I don't think could survive that. But the good thing is, Halo's picking up steam. People are loving all these new multiplayer expansions. They just announced today that the new expansion or update's going to include 8 maps. It's got some old game modes back. Like, I've noticed over the past few months that the Halo fan base, more than ever, more united. Like, they are really enjoying Halo. Now, as someone that doesn't touch multiplayer in general, really, again, outside of Call of Duty and playing Fall Guys, but we're not really going to include Fall Guys. It's good to see the fan base happy again. Like, Logan, you play Halo multiplayer. Like, what's the deal with all that?
They've just added a bunch of new modes and returning classic modes and weapons, and you can revisit battle passes. There's new temporary events. There's the current season going on. Basically, since they had a cleaning of house at management, and then brought in, promoted Pierre and some other people, and brought in a bunch of new blood. Basically, went radio silence and just put their head down to the ground and just went to work and were quiet for a long time. Slowly but surely, the game has reached a really, really good level right now. And people are very happy. Like, if this is what people thought Halo Infinite was going to be. So, it's a bummer that it's taken, longer than expected to get here. But for those who have been patient and stayed with it, or for those that are coming back and checking it out again, it's never been a better time to play Infinite. And I'm happy that the new staff is being rewarded and their patience and diligence is paying off. And they have the foundation to go forward for the next Halo title.
Yeah, it's good to see all this happening. Like, I've said many times, like I'm just completely out of multiplayer at the minute, but just seeing people's reactions to like how Halo's evolved over the past few years just goes to show that they have a good platform within that game and they just have to build on it. And when things get even better, who knows, maybe we'll actually see single player campaign content, which I would definitely be down for. But yeah, good to see Halo back up and running. Just I hope they don't pay attention to anyone wanting a reboot. Anyway, over Gamescom, we got a lot of good news. And unfortunately, people are going to need a massively loaded wallet because October was stacked anyway. And me and Logan have joked about how October's kind of, it's going to make people broke, right? If you have rent or mortgage due that month, you're screwed if you want games because everything's out. Everything out ever is out in October. Well, during Gamescom, they announced like 10 more games are also coming out in October. I just don't understand. Like, November exists. That's a good month. December, there's about 2 big games I can think of that come out in December. No, sorry, 1. So, like, when I see all these games being announced, I'm like, really? You're announcing a game coming out the same day as Assassin's Creed? Okay. But, yeah, so, like, the new Hellboy game comes out, I think, 2 days before Assassin's Creed. It's a busy month. Like, Logan, like, what do you think of the month being as packed as it is, and then Gamescom comes along and it just destroys it?
I mean, it's like when your sports team announces their schedule and you get it and you look at it, you go, okay, month by month breakdown. Like, this is going to be a tough stretch, or this is going to be an easy stretch. Like, this is like a gauntlet. October is ridiculously stacked. There are so many good games coming out. Wallets are gonna cry. It's it's brutal. I mean, you might have to call on some favors to get some games. It's nuts. Like, and the fact that these companies, like, why are you putting them all in October?
Yeah.
Like, November and December exist, right? Like, I remember growing up, November seemed to be the hot month for the
Yeah.
holiday. Like right before Christmas. My birthday's in November, so I'd always go, okay, yeah, this stuff's coming out around my birthday. I can ask for that for my birthday or whatever. And so it just is like, what happened in November? Remember the 5th? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's getting a bit crazy. Like every month I put out a video listing the 10 biggest games coming out that like the following month. Like I just put out a video 2 days ago, 10 biggest games coming to Xbox in September. Highly recommend people watch that. The link's in the description down below. But like I'm looking at October and I have my production schedule lined up, and I'm thinking maybe I actually have to do 20 biggest games because I literally have enough games to do 20. I could even do 25. It's a stacked month. But hey, like I've seen a lot of people say that this year, 2023, it's up there with 2007 and 2008. Like no one is really lacking. Like no matter what console you have, like there's tons of games coming. And when it comes to exclusive, like on Xbox, you have Forza coming down the line. Starfield's out in a few days. On PlayStation, you have Spider-Man 2 coming out in October, and on Switch, you also have the Mario. I think there's two Mario games coming out, isn't it? There's the Mario RPG remake, and then there's the 2D side scroller. So like no one's really lacking games. I think if anyone's online crying saying there's no games, like you clearly have no taste because all genres are covered, like literally everything. And I think that's cool. But just please, developers, stop listing October. And I mention this because tomorrow we get the release date for Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. And I have a feeling it's going to be October. If they're smart, it should be late November. Just play it safe. Unfortunately, there's still games coming out this year that need release dates. I think there's about five games that need release dates, which we should be getting soon. But yeah, busy months ahead. But during Gamescom, we got more games announced. So Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered and Turok 3 Remastered are coming to Xbox, and they were announced. And apparently, we're going to get some more information soon. And as someone that never got to play Star Wars Dark Forces back in the day, I'm excited. Like, granted, it is a 24-year-old Star Wars game. It's a Doom
I
clone.
think it came out in '95, if I'm not mistaken. It's up there.
Like, it's an old game. And even though it is a Doom clone, I am completely fine with that. They've done 3D models for all the sprite characters, so if you've played a Doom clone from like the 90s, it's all like 2D cardboard cutouts walking around. But on this, they're going to have 3D characters, and I think it looks really cool. It'll be a day one for me. You know how people have groups on their Xbox? I have a group specifically for Star Wars games. So, like, I have that many Star Wars games, so that'll be getting added to the list. And Turok 3, like, that's another game I never got to play back in the day, because was that a Nintendo 64 game or PlayStation 2 game?
It was in '64.
Wow. So, again, that was another game I missed. I think I had the first Turok game for the Nintendo 64. My God, that was a long time ago. But, like, I'm excited for it. Granted, they are old games, but we've talked about on this channel enough that I think preservation is huge for games. Like, granted, no matter when I talk about an old game, just look at the comments, and I have people saying it needs a remake. It needs a remake. And granted, there are games I think that would be cool to have remakes, but I think it's important for us to have these games be able to be, played on new platforms, because who knows if this does well, maybe we could see a Star Wars Dark Forces remake, while you still have the remaster on the platform. And I think that's the best outcome for everything. Like, Logan, obviously you're going to be getting these as well, right?
Oh, 100% day one. I'm so excited, like especially for Dark Forces. I missed it when it first came out, and I don't really play on PC, so I haven't been able to play it. So I can't wait to play it on Series X. And like, not only are they revamping the game and more modernizing it, doing their night dive touch, like the cutscenes and everything looks so much better already. Like
Yeah.
they showed a brief little bit about that. And then Turok 3 is gonna be crazy jump because they they showed in detail in some of the trailer stuff, like the original character, I can't remember her name, but she originally had one outfit on the cover of the game and everything, and like her gear and stuff, but into the game itself she wasn't actually equipped like that at all, and it was kind of weird. And so like they've gone back and they've made it to where she actually matches the cover of the game. Like if you look at the character models, and like the gameplay is a lot more fluid, and it's just shout out to Night Dive. They're one of my favorite indie or favorite studios out there right now, and they're just killing it.
Yeah, Night Dive Studios also did the Blade Runner Enhanced Edition remaster. Like they put a lot of care into these old games. Like I know this is a gaming podcast and we're going to be talking about new stuff, but like I think people should really experiment and like play some of these older games. Like if people like Blade Runner, play the remaster of Enhanced Edition. It is so good. I think it's like 4K 60 on Series X as well. Like they have that AI upscaling for the pre-rendered cutscenes. Like it's really impressive stuff what they did with such an old game. Because I think that's another game that came out in like '95 or something. Like it's a really old game at this point, but like I think they also teased that they're going to be working on remasters of the Darkness titles. Did you see that, Logan?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, like we already have those games on Xbox right now via backwards compatibility, and I think that's fine. You know, people can play them. I've got them digitally. I've got them on disc as well. But like, if they list them as remasters, unlike previous Star Wars games by Aspire, like we would also see them on the console as well. So I'm all for it. I love the Darkness. Personally, I think the first one's better. But yeah, um, I think it's a good time if you like retro games as well as old stuff because like there's a lot of stuff coming back, like a lot of cool stuff. Speaking of retro stuff, Logan, did you see that Atari announced a new console the other day?
Yeah, that wood grain is really nice.
Yeah, so basically it's a new Atari 2600 or 2800 and it's going to play games from both consoles with like backwards compatibility for cartridges. Like I don't know what the market is for that like kind of like category of consoles, but in the UK it costs $99. Um Now that was well before my time, the Ataris, but hell, if people want to get some old retro like cartridges at like a sale or something, the option's going to be there. I think it's really cool. All this older stuff's coming back. But yeah, old games, love them. We'll get into the big stuff now. Actually, before I continue, if you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. YouTube is not doing its thing by sharing content out, and it's frankly annoying when you put all this time into making stuff. Anyway, if you're enjoying it, please hit like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Super chats alive if you want anything read out, answered, all that stuff, and support the channel. Now, Logan, for the past 18 months, we've had to hear about the word monopoly on a bi-weekly basis, how monopolies are bad for the gaming industry, and it just came out a few days ago that Tencent has bought about 49% of Ubisoft, and nobody says anything about it. I'm not surprised. Are you?
No, Tencent is like this boogeyman, like in the gaming industry, where like people in the know are aware of them, and they're like, yeah, Tencent's out there, and they're it's almost like that great threat in like the old sci-fi novels or whatever. Like it's like they're looming out the edges of the empire, and then they keep creeping closer and closer, and then people are like, oh, don't worry about it. They're just nabbing up some outer rim planets or whatever. We're just not gonna worry about it. And then they show up at the empire's doorstep eventually. It's that they've just been amassing like, and they've been doing it smarter than THQ Nordic, which was just like, oh, this studio has a pulse, let's buy them, and then now they're having financial problems. Like they've been doing it a really smart way, and they've been able to sidestep some regulatory stuff by like we'll buy investments in this company, we won't own them, so it won't be an acquisition, but we'll have a big stake in them and get a whole bunch of money. And it's just like people are like either ignorant or just turning a blind eye or just don't care because it's fanboyism, but like they're the ones people should be more in tune, like watching to see just how big of an empire they grow.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Tencent, like people like to think, okay, well, it's this company that's buying a small stake in a publisher that's going to remain multi-platform. And it's like I don't think that's the case. Like, if you have this big Chinese conglomerate that's gobbling up tiny parts of all these companies, or at least a massive share amount of the company, like something's happening. Like people have theorized that they're going to come out with their own console in China and all this stuff, and they have patented a cloud controller in the past, and with cloud getting bigger and bigger, like who knows what happens. But I think at the end of the day, like people need to call out all monopolies if they think of it that way. Like Tencent, like if they have control of, like, let's say Ubisoft in general, like as of now that's not the case. Like what if, let's say, 5 years down the line they release their own cloud-based controller slash console, and they say, hey, Assassin's Creed is only on this. Like they're gonna make a lot of people, there's like tens of millions of Assassin's Creed fans, they are gonna make extremely angry. And I think when you have all these publishers buying other developers now, like there is something to be said that something's happening. Microsoft already has a console out. They already have games on PC. They allow their games to go on Steam. So it's like I don't think it's the same. And like you were saying with Embracer, it's a shame to see what's happening with Embracer because they own more studios than basically anyone else. Like everyone's sort of just like not looked at Embracer at buying all these studios, but certain things have fallen through. They didn't get investments when they wanted, and basically they're going to cancel a bunch of projects and close some studios because I think as of last year they had 84 games in development. Like 84. Like that's
That's
ridiculous.
not sustainable.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. And the problem with, like we've talked about this before, and I think that it's a big problem with Embrace is that they have different branches of publishers when it comes to like THQ Nordic and all that stuff. Sorry, we have another super chat by Mock Student 4364. Thank you very much for the 50CZK. He says, talking about THQ Embracer Group, do you think that Microsoft is going to buy some studios from them? I would love them to get IDOS. That's a good question. That's a very good question because I think we may have talked about this on the show. Like Microsoft's had this weird thing for the past 18 months where they cannot announce other studio purchases, right? They can't announce other acquisitions because it would look bad with the FTC. It would put more light on them when they don't want it. So like there's been this theory rolling around, well, what if Embracer was kind of used as a dummy corporation for Microsoft to purchase Eidos and Crystal Dynamics? Like it's not that unrealistic if you think about it. Like more unrealistic things have happened. And when when Embracer made a deal with Amazon for Tomb Raider, that kind of just made me really think about it because I don't understand why Embracer would get this household IP that everyone on Earth knows of, and you give Amazon the publishing rights and all that stuff. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. Like I've been thinking this for about like 8 months or something now. Like I think it could happen. Like Logan, we've talked about this before. Do you think that's really such a pie in the sky like thing?
No, I actually think we're approaching a world where that could realistically happen because think about it. They're not doing well financially right now. They're in a bind. They had that $2 billion deal with Savvy Group fall apart, which really put a dent into their pocketbook. I mean, that's another reason why handshake deals, like in theory, are really good. But with some companies or some, enterprises or whatever, you want it in paper to make sure it's, solid ground in case, something changes in the industry. So the fact that that happened and then they're canceling other projects and, trying to cut down on costs. And those studios are, not the cheapest to run, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos. So to me, it makes sense, especially since they're already working on Perfect Dark and assisting with other things Xbox related. To me, like, you can't say with 100% certainty, but to me, I feel like those were two studios Microsoft would have purchased had ABK not put them in a stranglehold and made them where they weren't allowed to buy anything for a while until this deal is done. I think if the ABK thing wasn't going on, I think they would have bought them already.
Oh yeah, like Eidos Montreal, they are working on Fable as well. So like there are already the connections there. Like you said, Crystal Dynamics is working on Perfect Dark. Like it just makes a lot of sense. And again, thank you very much, Mock Student 4364 for the super chat. But yeah, like Embrace is in a weird spot because they have these different branches. Like if you see THQ Nordic on a box, like a lot of people think of them as this cheaper studio or cheaper publisher. But when you see something like a Deep Silver or something like that, another publishing arm of Embracer, you kind of look at it as a higher quality product, even if it's just based on a logo. And I think that's
Prime Matter, I think, as well.
yeah, Prime Matter, and I think that's a big problem with like Embracer. No, there's no connection between all of them. You know, like they should have had all of their publishing arms combine, or at least work together more. Because when they had their THQ like Gamescom stream, they should have featured their other titles from the rest of the publishing arms. So that's something they have to sort out. And as far as I know, isn't Embracer like this could be completely wrong. As far as I know, that Embracer is owned by like this Swedish billionaire that likes video games. Like,
I think that might be accurate, but I'm not entirely sure.
could be true, whatever. But I think Embracer needs to solve things. Like they own Lord of the Rings as an IP now. like why of all things would they buy the Lord of the Rings intellectual property? Like it's crazy. Like when it comes to games and movies, anyway, like they own that now. It's stupid. And Warner Brothers is going to work with Embracer on future Lord of the Rings projects. Like it's crazy. Speaking of Lord of the Rings projects, if they're going to make more video games, bring back the EA Lord of the Rings games from 2002, 2003, because those games were damn good. Anyway,
The trilogy.
yeah, those games are such a lot of fun. You know, granted, the cutscenes are basically just clips from the film, but those games were just so much fun, and at the time they were visually striking as well. But yeah, hopefully Embracer gets things sorted because that's a lot of people leaving, the industry and getting out of work. Anyway, before we continue, we have another super chat by Nick W. Thank you very much for the 199. He says, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true about Embracer. Like, I don't like to be a tinfoil hat dude. I don't like to be someone that has a bunch of theories and all that stuff because, we live in a world where people believe that you can land on a gas giant, right? So it's all over the place, but
It's walking distance, man.
yeah, walking distance. And I think when it comes to all the studios that they've just been purchasing left and right, like I think it kind of just makes sense. Like it's a really good fit. Microsoft has said they want more developers that fit genres they don't typically make. Well, you have Crystal Dynamics. They specialize in third-person action adventure games. That's a genre that Microsoft, they've said they want more developers that make them. You have Eidos Montreal, which can make RPGs. Well, Microsoft said that they want to make more RPGs, even though they have a bunch of developers already making role-playing games. And plus, I want them to buy them just so I can have a new Deus Ex. So, like, no matter whatever happens, and I get a brand new Adam Jensen-led Deus Ex, I'll be happy. And plus, I want a fourth Tomb Raider game with Camilla Luddington returning. So, all that stuff. But yeah, I think that's going to happen. Again, I don't like to be tinfoil hat wearing about this stuff, but I think it could happen. I think when this whole Activision ABK deal is through, like, there'll be some weird, like, long list post on Twitter saying, hey, Microsoft's working in collaboration with Embracer. It's like, we all know what you're doing. And I hope I'm right. Again, I want my Deus Ex, and I want my Tomb Raider game with Camilla Luddington. But yeah, thank you very much for the 199 super chat, Nick W. I think, when it comes to gaming, like, we need more of these smaller publishers to grow and, like, be successful, because too many times we see games fail, people complain that they want more single player games and then they don't buy them, and like these small publishers just will not grow. Like I talk about Focus Entertainment all the time because they publish all these really interesting games that nobody else seems to make. And personally, I want to see them become huge, right? I think by the end of this generation, they're going to be a lot of people's favorite third-party publisher because everything they seem to publish is really different to the rest of the industries coming out with. A lot of their games seem to be really successful, and I don't know, they seem to publish a lot of really cool games. You know, earlier this year they had Atomic Heart. Last year they had A Plague Tale Requiem and Hard Space Shipbreaker and Evil West. Very different games to what everyone else is making. And personally, I love Focus Entertainment. I think they just make really good stuff. Anyway, we'll move on. This is a bit of a small topic. Sean Ashmore is going to be in Alan Wake 2. As someone that talks about Quantum Break on probably a weekly basis, I think it's really cool that there's more collaboration going between those actors. And maybe it's just me hoping that we're still going to get a Quantum Break 2. Like, Logan, did you say that?
Yeah, that definitely I perked my ears up when I heard about the him being in Alan Wake 2 because at first I was like, wait, is this maybe a cross universe appearance from his character from Quantum Break, or is it just a new character? Turns out it's a sheriff, so it's not his Quantum Break character. But still, I like to see actors have good relationships with studios, continue to collaborate with them.
Yeah, I like to see these characters in these roles, like, and plus, like, Sean Ashmore, he's always talked about like how much he likes these games, and if you hear an actor, like, I think if you've been listening to this podcast or been paying attention to the gaming industry in general, when you have a actor, television or movie actor, in a role in a video game, whenever they get asked this question, like, do you play video games? It's always one of two answers. It's like, no, I had someone in my family that played them. Like, we hear that all the time, and it's not interesting. Gamers do not want to hear that the lead actor or lead actress of their, beloved IP adaptation has never played a video game before. But when they hear someone like Henry Cavill talk about, The Witcher and talk about Mass Effect, and you have Sean Ashmore being excited about another Remedy game, like, that is way more satisfying to hear than the other thing. Because, like I've said before, like, Henry Cavill basically got screwed over by all the Witcher things and the Netflix thing. Like, they didn't want to make a Witcher universe with Henry Cavill. They wanted to make their own thing, just slap the Witcher on it, This episode's turning into me ranting about the Witcher, I've noticed. But yeah, it's really good to see. Anyway, we'll move on. We've got a lot of big topics to cover. You know what? I think I'll talk about this now. So I have this kind of theory, Logan, about the game industry at the minute. And I've really mentioned this to you before the show started, where we have all these big games come out, and a lot of them fail. Maybe it's because of the $70 price tag. Maybe it's because of the multiplayer. But, like, I think that this generation is going to be known for its single-player games. Because towards the end of last generation, you had these big single-player games come out, be them exclusive or not. You had God of War on PlayStation. You had Red Dead Redemption 2 on, all platforms and all that stuff. Tears of the Kingdom on Nintendo. Like, people really love these diverse single-player games with lots of really cool gameplay mechanics. But, like, during the end of the 360 generation, we were getting all that. We were getting really cool games, but a lot of developers start shoving these multiplayer modes into existing franchises. You had Dead Space, which was this amazing horror game that people loved, and then when they came out with the sequel, it had a multiplayer mode attached to it. BioShock 1, single-player game, people loved. The sequel came out, had bloody multiplayer attached to it. Like, throughout that, in the second half, I want to say, of the 360 generation, all these games were getting these slapped-on multiplayer modes. Like, Batman Arkham Origins has a multiplayer PvP mode. Like, it makes no sense. And then, just before that generation ended, they start putting microtransactions in all these games. Dead Space 3, it had microtransactions in it. And then the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 came out, and all these games were littered with microtransactions. All these developers were shifting their games to be these live shared world experiences. Destiny was popular, so we have to make all games like Destiny. And every single game like that since then has failed. None of them have picked up steam. And where am I going with all this? Where am I ranting to? It's because I think that developers are finally realizing that we are willing to pay hard cash for single player content in a sea that's overwhelmed with multiplayer crap and microtransactions. Like, we're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate in a bit. Why do you think Baldur's Gate's so captivating to people? Now, some developers are whining online because it has something to do with AAA RPG ambition and all that stuff. No, it's because it's a complete single-player game at launch, feature complete, no DLC, no microtransactions. You buy the game and that's it. It works. It's good. And you're not forced into any of these stores or multiplayer or any of this crap. Like, when you buy Call of Duty, you know what you're getting into. When you buy Battlefield or Halo, you know what you're getting into. But when you buy most of the games, especially single player, you don't want to be given this extra crap that nobody cares about. So I think that this generation is going to be known for its single player games. I think we're going to have this renaissance of single player content in RPGs, because I think Elden Ring, this generation so far, has scared developers, realizing that we want single player. And even though that game does have PvP, like, people mainly play that for the single player. And look at towards the end of last generation, you had Jedi Fallen Order. That scared the crap out of EA. That made them realize, wait, we can make hundreds of millions of dollars making single player games. That's why Dragon Age got rebooted as a single player game. That's why Mass Effect is going to be single player. That's why Iron Man, single player. Black Panther, single player. Dead Space got a remake, single player, no microtransactions. We're going to see a Dead Space remake too. Like, I'm looking at all these mistakes we got last generation. I think finally, maybe developers are learning that maybe sticking towards single player and just let the big multiplayer games have their fun. Like, I think that's going to be a thing. Logan, I've been writing for 10 minutes about this. What do you think?
Well, I completely agree. I mean, you go through gaming history and it's, there's kind of these different pockets of time where it's more single player focused and more multiplayer focused, and like the pendulum swings back and forth. It feels like we've kind of hit a sweet spot right now where we have some great multiplayer stuff out right now. You've got your Call of Duties, you've got Fortnite, you've got these games as a service games that have huge, thriving communities that are doing really well. And then you're having a renaissance of truly great single player games. Like, I know horror isn't everybody's cup of tea. I'm a big, scary movie and game buff. Like, I love them. Junkie. Like, there's been a huge renaissance in those and other like hardcore single player experiences, like deep customization and character development RPGs. Like, I know BioWare is, not looking so great right now, but like the whole BioWare era type RPGs that we grew up with and loved. Like, there's been a massive renaissance in those. Starfield's coming out. Like, Bethesda's back in good graces after, Fallout 76 wasn't what people wanted, and they spent years, and it's in a great state now. And then, Redfall is, I'm willing to give benefit of the doubt of that one, and it seems like they're going to be updating that soon. But, like, in general, like, it's just a golden era of single player games. You remember a few years ago when it looked like single player might be just killed off. Like,
Yeah.
they had Bethesda even having, like, they had, I can't remember her name, but the Wonder Woman actress, like Lydia Carter, I think.
Yeah.
Um, they had her do like a trailer, like basically narrative thing about like save single player. Like, these games are important to people. Not everybody wants to be jumped into a lobby and just bashing people or just shooting waves and waves of enemies, or SWAT this or Counter Strike that. Like, people want their hardcore immersion. Like, dude, this is a haunted house and there's zombies and a whole bunch of creepy, stuff happening, and it's single player. Or, you know, we joke about the sad dad narrative, but like those have had a renaissance, and like people want character immersion and detail and story and great experiences. And like Hi-Fi Rush is single player, and it's like crazy colorful and over the top, like from a bygone era. And I think it just shows that we can have all these things. And the fact that some developers get jealous and envious and like, man, this means more work or work for us, or we can't just sit and press a button and send out this shoddy effort game. Well, that's just too bad. Get over it.
Yeah, I think like last generation, we felt this a lot. Like all these games were either multiplayer focused or like filled with lots of bugs. Like no matter what game you bought, there was always a problem, and it got to a point where, and this was before Cyberpunk. This was before. Oh, I'm concerned because of Cyberpunk. Like from the start of last generation, like look at Assassin's Creed Unity. One of the bugs removed the face of the main character.
Oh
like
my gosh.
yeah, like that was nightmare material. That was so bad that Ubisoft, like their Twitter account, they joke about it to this day because it was such a joke. And like I think this is I hope I'm right, but I think there's going to be like this massive shift. So you're going to have like the Call of Duties and Battlefields and Halos still do their multiplayer modes as well. Like those games are always going to be big. But I think that the time of all these developers putting hours and months and years of effort into these multiplayer games that, let's face it, are going to die within 6 months. Like, why do that? Why not make a good single player game, advertise it correctly, and sell it? Like, remember, I think it was like 6 months ago or something, we got this list of like 10 games, like 10 multiplayer games that were just like shutting down. Like, those are games people can't experience anymore, but then again, people didn't want to experience them anyway. So, and look at Microsoft. They used to be known as the shooter box, the microtransaction box, and all this stuff. Well, look at them now. They focus in heavy in single player content. Like most of their games in development right now are single player, and and or RPGs. So I think that maybe developers are finally trying to catch on. And again, Baldur's Gate 3, people are looking at that thinking, wow, no bugs. It has no microtransactions, and what's this? There's no store for DLC. Like, people just find that refreshing. Isn't it sad that we're at a point now where we find games that are feature complete at launch refreshing? Like, that's kind of sad, And I think that hopefully by the end of this generation, it's just going to be filled with lots of really cool experiences, because I think gamers need to maybe try other things. It's one of the reasons why I push Game Pass. It's because I think it lets people experience more content that they've never played before and new genres. Like one of my friends, and I know he might be listening right now, like he used to stay mainly on shooters, and now he plays RPGs and all that stuff. And he plays arguably, I'd say, more single player content now as someone that was hardcore into Call of Duty. So I think this generation we're going to see this like huge renaissance of single player games. Bit of a weird rant for me. Didn't really plan that, but hey, I need more single player content from developers without the big push of like stores and multiplayer. Like, and do you know, when I was talking about last generation where developers were shifting to like shared worlds and all this stuff, Logan, did you ever play Just Cause 3?
I don't believe so. I played the fourth one though.
So the third game was bare bones, right? Bare bones, to the point where people were wondering, like, you have this big map with not much to do. You have a wingsuit, which is pretty cool, but other than that, like, it didn't really make much sense to why the game world was so empty. Well, that game was rebooted several times. Square Enix actually thought that the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 generation wasn't going to be successful. They thought that iPads, tablets and Android consoles were going to take over. A lot of publishers last generation, because of the advent of microtransactions on mobile, they all thought that all this money put into Xbox One and PlayStation 4 was going to be money down the drain. So originally, Just Cause 3 was going to be a multiplayer game, and then it was going to be an episodic title. And then eventually they were able to make a game that was single player and albeit very boring, and that's how we got this empty game. Why do you think, like, Rise of the Tomb Raider was partnered with Xbox? That wouldn't be the game it was if it wasn't funded by Xbox. There was a point where in development where Rise of the Tomb Raider was going to be episodic, right? So every time you enter a new hub area, that would have been a new episode, and thankfully that didn't happen. And I don't think most people know about that, but like that's a weird time for gaming. This weird multiplayer and shift where developers literally thought that all these hardcore gamers, people listening right now, were going to shift to iPad only gaming because of all the microtransactions and all the addictive natures of and all the crap that's on that platform. But yeah, thankfully the gaming industry, they seem to be learning, which is a good thing. Anyway, just needed to have a little bit of a rant about that. You know, while we're talking about it, let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. It's in the headline, it's in the title of the video. Baldur's Gate 3 is in fact coming to Xbox by the end of the year. And I think a lot of people are happy. I've been talking about this for years now. I didn't just up and start talking about it because I thought it was an exclusive. I've literally talked about it for years. Actually, before we continue, we have another super chat for $5 by Fenton Barnes. My font is extremely tiny at the minute. Excuse if I get anything wrong. It says, I can't do nothing but support the channel, Mon. It's World of Mass Effect. Well, thank you very much. I talk every episode about Mass Effect. I mention Mass Effect all the time. One of the reasons why I get so excited about Mass Effect is because it's a very unique universe. It's filled with lots of really cool characters, and I've played those games so many times to the point where I know what all the characters are going to say, but every time I play it, I just enjoy it. I love that trilogy more than anything. And yeah, again, thank you very much for the $5 super chat, Fenton Barnes. Logan, you like Mass Effect, right? It's not just me rambling on about how good that is.
Of course, it's one of my favorite franchises I've ever played. It's just glorious sci-fi and peak BioWare at their powers. Taking what they learned and mastered in Knights of the Old Republic and then using new tech and making their own, IP in a space and exploration and characters and writing, the camaraderie, the bonding on the Normandy, Shakespeare in the park with these random aliens. It's just so much random, just amazing stuff in that whole trilogy. And how all your decisions matter. I randomly helped this one person out in a bind in the first one, and lo and behold, when I really, really needed help, they showed up at the end of the third game to bail me out of something. It just, how they just tied all this stuff together, and it was just truly incredible. I love Mass Effect. This is my favorite podcast on the Citadel, so I love Mass Effect.
Yeah, a bit of a tangent onto Mass Effect before we talk about the Baldur's Gate stuff. When it comes to Mass Effect, when that game was announced, I literally sat up from my chair. I was probably sitting on my bed or something. I was a young lad. But anyway, I sat up on my bed. I was like, what is this? I was like, I couldn't believe my eyes because I saw that BioWare logo and I was like, wait, I've recently finished KOTOR. What is this? I was like, they made KOTOR. What is this? And I just see the Mass Effect logo, the galaxy map, just the narration talking about what this universe is, and I see that it's a third-person shooter, and my eyeballs almost popped out of my head. It was like Christmas Day times 1,000. What is this universe? And everything I saw about it, I think it was the E3 of 2006. It might be it. But that was before you could readily stream all the A3 showcases whenever you want. So I saw this and I couldn't see it again. It was no on-demand format for A3 at the time, and it was before they were put on YouTube. So I got the unofficial Xbox magazine about a month later, and it had a DVD with a bunch of trailers on it. So I did what I normally would. I'd sit back, watch them with a can of Lucozade, and I saw Mass Effect listed on the DVD list, and I was like, "Ooh, I need to watch this." And I swear I must have watched that trailer about 100 times. Like, I'm not even kidding. I think I might have worn out the DVD. But yeah, that's how much I love Mass Effect. It's just good. It's a great franchise. But yeah, thank you very much for the $5 super chat, Fenton Barnes. But yeah, Baldur's Gate 3. It's announced for Xbox. There's been this weird bit of a tension over the past few weeks because we knew that Baldur's Gate 3 was going to come to Xbox eventually. It's because they were sorting out the split screen mode for the Series S and all that stuff, because there is meant to be this feature parity between the Series S and the Series X, which we all knew. And I've noticed there's been a lot of hate over the past month because people have been saying Microsoft needs to drop the whole parity thing. But in the past week, I've seen those same people angry, trying to bring up saying that people should sue Microsoft because they're ditching the parity narrative. Well, according to Phil Spencer, people have been wrong about the parity thing for the whole time. It's a more of a laxed thing. But anyway, they met up in person. Long story short, it's coming to Xbox Series X and S this year, and split screen support's going to be there on the Series X, and it's going to come at some point for the Series S. And I think that is the best way to do it. Rather than just cut one off completely, the game's still going to be there, and everyone's happy. Personally, I think that was the best way to do it in a situation where Microsoft was between a rock and a hard place. They either could make it just for the Series X and then create an absolute crap storm for the Series S owners, but now they're saying, hey, that mode comes later. And I think that was the right way to go about it. Logan, I know you're the big advocate for split screen in general. Like, personally, I think it was the best way to go about it. What do you think?
Yeah, this was kind of the compromise idea I proposed last time of basically like if a feature just can't run on the S but can run on the X, just make it happen. And know we have our jokes about gamers smart versus gamers not, whatever. But like the whole people can understand that this model can do things the other one can't, and Phil referenced that basically at Gamescom in his IGN interview, and he's like, yeah, like there are all kinds of things the X can do that the S can't, and we just don't really talk about it. But you look at it, and yeah, it can do more than the S does, and we're not requiring the same thing for everything. The split screen thing just blew up for some reason, but basically, just like it won't be coming at launch, but we're going to get it out there. It's a huge Game of the Year worthy title. We're going to make sure everybody gets to play it on Xbox, both consoles. And the X will have split screen at launch, and the S won't, but we're still trying. And we will try to get it on there at some point. To me, that's the best option when you're given not the best hand of cards. Like, make it to where everybody can play it, everybody knows the hand they're dealt and what they're working with, and if they can get it running, great, and if not, well, at least you get to play the game.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that it's still going to be on yes. Like, that's the big takeaway.
Yeah.
It's just that mode comes later, and I think people will be fine with that. I think I've seen a lot of people outcry. Like, I've got footage going on the podcast right now. Hogwarts Legacy, right? Love that game. The most requested feature in that game has not came. The most requested feature in how long's that game been out? 7 months or something. And even though it's sold over 20 million copies, it's still yet to release on Switch. They still haven't put Fortnite mode in. And an absolutely beautiful game. And yeah, they've added no features since launch. But this is like, a less wanted feature, but at least they're going, the full like mileage to get there. But yeah, I think it's a good move. And I think I have seen some creators mention that they should just ditch the S for some games. I think that is the stupidest thing ever because, like, a lot of these games can run on a Steam Deck. Like, it's all about optimization. This was just a drop in the pan, bloody split screen thing. It probably has something to do with the amount of polygons in that game per scene, and then rendering two different images. And plus the RAM's lower. It's a bunch of weird issues. And plus, I'm not a developer, and I'm not going to pretend to be. I'll let developers take care of the work. They said they're working with Microsoft. It'll happen eventually. But the big part is that it's coming to Xbox this year, and it's a critically acclaimed game. People love that RPG, and I think it's the one RPG more than anything I've noticed. It's made a lot of a lot of the game industry look real thirsty, if you know what I mean. like, uh, a lot of gamers are really horny about that game for some reason. Like,
Oh my gosh, the memes are so funny.
yeah,
And like side tangent, but bravo to Larian and their actors and actresses for embracing the memes and the just junk posts that people put and having the voice actors and actresses go out there and read like instead of mean tweets but just like goofy quotes or dumb things that people come up with about the characters. They're hilarious. Like you can go down a whole rabbit hole and lose several hours just laughing your head off at some of these.
yeah, and I think it's important that it comes this year because Microsoft isn't missing out on the hype cycle, right? The game comes out next week, I think, for PlayStation, and it's still going to be marketed for months. And then when the Xbox version comes out, it's still going to be in the marketing cycle. I think it's one of the reasons why, whenever Sony ports one of their exclusives to PC, it doesn't do that well recently, and that's because they miss out on the marketing cycle. Like if Ratchet and Clank on PC, bit of a tangent, it came out in the exact same time as the PlayStation version, it would have sold millions, in my opinion, but it missed out in the marketing, and that's a big advantage for Microsoft when they release games simultaneously on console and PC. It's because all of the marketing includes console, PC, Game Pass. Like, you all know that. But if they were launching a PC version like 6-7 months later, a year later, they're not getting the multi-millions of dollars marketing campaign they would otherwise. So, yeah, Microsoft's going to get one of the best games of the year. Maybe two, who knows. But yeah, good thing it's coming. And I think, honestly, it's kind of a good thing that it's coming later because people are going to be too obsessed with Starfield to jump into yet another 100+ hour RPG. Like, if it came out on Xbox the same day as Starfield, like, how are people going to choose what to play? Like, if you love fantasy, you're going to pick that. If you love sci-fi, you're going to pick Starfield. But if you love both, like me, you're kind of screwed, because I want to play
Flip a coin.
yeah, like flip a coin, but bloody hell, like I don't know how people are going to cope. But yeah, it's coming, and that's the good news. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what, Logan, you threw this in chat before we went live. So Xbox hires former Sony VP. What's this about? Because this is huge.
Yeah, they basically hired this lady who had worked with Sony for 20 plus years and has a ton of experience and relationships established and everything. And it's to help address Xbox's Japan presence. So it's just yet another sign that they're taking the region very seriously. They're not treating it like a niche or a fad or like a yeah, we'll get around to it. Like no, they want to make ground in Japan and now. So a big hire for them.
Yeah, like the whole Final Fantasy 14 thing proves that there's more effort going into it than ever before. Every time Phil Spencer's in an interview with, anyone basically, they mention Japan. They mention Japanese games. And like, there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast may not like Japanese RPGs, and I get that. But I think it's important to have all genres on the console. Like, even if it's a niche graphic novel, interactive graphic novel, like Microsoft needs to have that on the platform because that's just the best way to go about it. Like, look at the amount of games on Steam. There's a ton of niche genres that people just have access to whenever they want. So, yeah, and the fact that they have someone that used to work from Sony, which means they have a lot of contacts, and Microsoft still needs to resolve the situation. Like, look, the big one we all know is Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, and Final Fantasy 16. Like, as much as people want to bring up those are quote unquote lifetime exclusives now, the original Final Fantasy VII was listed as a lifetime exclusive in 2015. So we can't say that those games can't come over because the proof's in the pudding and the proof's out there. So yeah, I think it's a big move. Microsoft's clearly putting more money into Japan. Like the Series S and the Series X or Xbox in general, they are never going to be number one in hardware in Japan. Like everyone knows that. But they need to put money into studios and people working over there, getting more games coming over, more talent, and basically more developers becoming more familiar with Xbox. Xbox has had some amazing ports in the past for like the One X with Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3 on the One X, like really amazing versions. So yeah, it's good work, and hopefully, I think maybe within the next 2-3 years, we see things like maybe they own or at least partner with a few studios and some exclusives because they need exclusive content. And once again, I will sequel beg. They need a Lost Odyssey 2. There's no other way about it. And especially with Mistwalker moving on to new games soon. So, yeah, it's a good thing. And I just hope Microsoft keeps investing in Japan because a lot of people and a lot of companies would just completely ditch Japan if they weren't making the money there. So Microsoft clearly sees that there's a want for Japanese content on the platform. Again, Final Fantasy VII is a household name. They need to figure something out and get that game to come over. Even if when the whole trilogy's done or whatever, they need those games to come over. And personally, I do think that'll happen. When the trilogy's done, there'll be like a trilogy game box set announced for Xbox or something. So in like 2028 or something. It's a long ways off, but I think that's better than never. We'll continue. Before we continue, about halfway through the show, a little more than halfway. If you're enjoying the show, please hit like, share, and subscribe. I hate doing these ads, but I have to. Super chats are live if you want to support the content and ask anything, all that stuff. Logan, let's talk about Starfield. Oof.
What do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, where to start? The game is just around the corner, and everyone's excited. Like I said earlier on the show, like it's an event game. People should be excited. People were excited about Skyrim, Fallout 4, Fallout 3, New Vegas. I'll probably mention just Skyrim, Oblivion. And every single time those games come out, like everyone stops. Everyone stops talking about anything else, and we play those games. And early reports coming out that it's the least buggy Bethesda game, which is good to hear. Unfortunately, people are breaking an NDA when they shouldn't be, but they're hinting that it's very good. And all in all, like it all looks like it's pointing towards a great experience. So what's wrong? Why are people attacking this game? It's because people are unfortunately clowns. Right? There's a lot of people in the gaming space that will act like clowns, that will hate the game because, look, it's not going to be on PlayStation. It's made a lot of people insanely salty. People today claim that Bethesda lied because you can't land on certain things. So, if you watch the 40-minute showcase back in June, like Todd Howard, the character in the game, is standing on a moon around a gas giant. And Todd Howard says, can you see that moon in the distance? You can fly to it and land on it. Pretty simple, right? Everyone understands this stuff because, you can't really land on a gas giant. Because if you went to school, you know that you can't really land on gas. And unfortunately, some people either just were failed by the education system or never seen an episode of Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, unfortunate for them. Question why, and I've seen multiple people mention this today. Why can't you land on gas giants in Starfield? It's a lie because you can't land on gas giants. Microsoft were lying because you can't land on 1,000 planets. And by the way, I do think Microsoft means 1,000 worlds, as in 1,000 places you can visit. Moons, planets. I don't think they mean 1,000 planets, as in planets. Logan, it's been an absolute clown fest when it comes to people trying to hate. People are grasping for straws when it comes to hating on Starfield now, to where they basically saying Bethesda's lying because you can't land on a gas giant.
I mean, I thought we had peaked reached the bottom of the cellar of some abandoned facility when we were at the menu somehow representing the quality of the game or how much effort or how much care they put into it. and if it was rushed or not. I thought we had peaked at that, but no, no, they found even more ways to somehow, even more beat the horse death. It is just ridiculous. Like, seriously, like it's a space game that is going to insane depths to adhere to the laws of nature and science when realistic or feasible. Obviously, there's gamey stuff in it, so there's going to be some stuff that the quantum physicist might quibble about, but for game reasons, just for fun, they'll do that. But for the most part, they're trying to adhere to NASA and SpaceX and like time honored, understood laws of nature. And so, for example, like the gas planet thing, like aside from, maybe cores or just like very small segments, like those things, it would be like trying to like land something on just air and just like take a step out and you just fall. It just doesn't make sense. It's science, dude. Like quote Breaking Bad. It's ridiculous. Like people are just grasping at anything and everything to try to discredit this game. And then if people criticize the game and then they're or criticize Microsoft or Bethesda over time, then they're wondering, "Hey, why wasn't I the first one to get access to this to deal with this and that?" And it's like, "Well, let me think here. Why would you not be first on the list?" And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, we'll be talking about the reaction to the review codes in a minute. But like the whole gas giant thing, I knew it was going to eventually be brought up, right? Like next, people be complaining that you can't land on a star, right? you know, I think it like going back to like 2005 or six or whatever. I'm gonna nerd out a bit. In Star Trek Enterprise, there's an episode called Sleeping Dogs, where there's a Klingon warbird partially sunk into the atmosphere of a gas giant. It's being crushed slowly, so they send down a shuttle pod to rescue people that may be trapped inside. And well, it's sinking lower and lower, and it's getting crushed. Now, as we saw in the news about a month ago, pressure and something within pressure can be crushed. Same thing happens in gas giants. That's why we haven't sent probes deep into Jupiter, because they literally get crushed. The footage is out there. You can literally see little videos of snippets that have been caught before, like, literally before the probes have been, like, destroyed. So, like, I was hoping people would know that. Yes, it is a video game, but it's meant to be more on the realistic side. It's meant to be more like Interstellar and less like Star Wars. So, yeah. People just need to, educate themselves. Like, hell, there's billions of documentaries on YouTube where you can watch astronomy stuff, right? Like, do something. But yeah, it just continues, because last week it was the whole menu thing. This week it's this. And it's non-stop, and it goes into the whole review code situation. Like, look, I have a large following on Twitter, but that does not let me get early access to Starfield review codes. Like, there's some people got them last week or a week and a half ago, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not salty that I didn't get a code early. I'm not like Stewie Griffin, like when he rolls onto his side and starts crying. Like, I'm fine with it, I get it when everyone else does. And if I do get a review code, which I might, I get it the day it comes out. And I'm still grateful for that. And I've noticed that there's people that do nothing but whine and make negative Xbox content year-round, daily. And they've been whining that they haven't received codes for early access. And when I say early access, I mean like, weeks early. And the same thing happened today with Eurogamer. They came out and complained that they didn't get code for reviews early like everyone else. I'm sorry, but actually, you know what? I'm not sorry. Why would Microsoft give early access to codes to potentially the biggest game of the year, the game that's going to cause the most amount of traffic? Why give them early access to codes that's going to make them a hell of a lot of money when they do nothing but crap on Microsoft and Xbox on a weekly basis? It makes no sense. Like if I ran my own video game company, I wouldn't give anyone free codes if they crapped on me constantly. Like it just seems like why would you do that? And unfortunately, kind of Microsoft gave in and gave Eurogamer codes, but apparently that's only so Digital Foundry can access them. And I think fair enough, that's fine. They test all these games, but Logan, like it's been an absolute clown show. Like I won't say the YouTubers' names on the channel because I don't do drama, but like to see it goes from Xbox hating YouTube channels that whining that they didn't get no shit, Sherlock. You didn't get a game code for a game made by a company that you've trashed all year, and now it's these big companies that do nothing but let's face it, they bash Microsoft at any given opportunity, and they don't get codes. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, and it plays into the whole mindset of entitlement, and just because you're one of the biggest outlets or have a huge following, this or that, doesn't mean you are entitled, and it is a mandate from heaven, right, that you get to just have a code be dropped at your digital doorstep, and you don't have to lift a finger, and then you can go about it, and then go back to bashing and trashing and whatever strokes your fancy. It's just goofy at this point that these people make a name for themselves with respect the hustle. These people get big accounts, they get monetary endorsements, they get followings, they build a name for themselves. So kudos, they're successful at that. But when at some point you got to look at the game you're playing and realize, you know, maybe if I keep poking this bear, the bear is not going to be thrilled eventually about it. And it it's just funny. And then like the bear, reacts, and then they're like, but the bear was not nice. The bear did this or this. I'm like, what did you expect to happen? I mean, Sony has done this with outlets that have given less than favorable reviews to some of their games, deserving or not. And I remember they even asked for clarification on one.
Yep.
Like they're like, justify this. And then Warner Brothers and Bethesda, other companies have basically gone, okay, this outlet's gonna be, a punk about this, so we're just not going to give them codes. If they want to review, you know what? Free citizens, they can just go buy a code and write it up themselves, but we're not giving you a free code just so you can trash us even more and, get content off of us. Hey, it's ridiculous. And then the fact that some of these people throw a fit and then they're like, all right, fine. You know what? Just shut up. Okay, fine. And they give them a code so that there can be no drama, and they can, wipe their tears off and then just go back to whatever they do. But no, what's really funny is that now that it's delayed, even if they give a score that would be less than desirable, it will be out after all these other ones have already come out, where people have had time to make their own opinion anyway. So I don't know. In the end, it's just really funny.
Yeah, I'm going to make a little quick prediction for its metascores. And bear in mind, I don't care about metascores. Like, I'll play a game, it's good or bad, whatever. Like, I make up my own mind. I bet that one of these three outlets will give Starfield the lowest review score for a media outlet. It's either going to be Destructoid, Eurogamer, or GameSpot. Like, one of them three are going to give Starfield a really low score, and it's going to knock it down 1 or 2 points. Like, I legitimately believe that. And they've done it recently. And look at Kotaku, right? They didn't get an early review code for Tears of the Kingdom, and it was like a whole thing on Twitter where they were like playing up to the whole like they were being victims. Like Logan, you probably saw some of the things that were said, right? I can't say it on the channel.
Yeah,
But
like the audacity to compare it to one of the greatest atrocities in human history,
Yeah.
comparing that to, oh no, Nintendo didn't like it that we wrote this, and so they didn't give us a code. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, and they were posting like spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom before the game came out, and all this stuff like the map size and just basically spoiling all the aspects of the game. And they wanted a review code. Like I can't blame Nintendo for not giving them a review copy. It's like like Kotaku of all places, they're gonna complain about a $70 game where they're probably gonna make like 1,000 times more than that off their coverage for that one game. And it's the same thing with Eurogamer. Eurogamer is literally the IGN of Europe, basically. Like they are massive. They can afford their own game, and even if they do put out a late review, which they're going to, haha, they're still going to make money off it. So I think it's just like, and I love the fact that these companies are finally pushing back. You know, unfortunately, in the past, like Sony in the past, they've asked for clarification on reviews. People have gotten fired because of GameSpot. I think it was GameSpot gave them a lower score for The Last of Us, the first one, and that person that wrote that review got fired. So, like, it's a weird industry, and I don't agree with everything that goes on, but Nintendo and Microsoft, they made the right call. Don't give these places review codes, and the people that completely crap on your channel year round, of course you're not going to get a review code. Of course you're not. Like, and by the way, some of these channels are complete grifting channels. Like, they literally make any story about Xbox clickbait, daily news about hating on Microsoft. No shit that you didn't get a review code for the biggest game of the year that's going to drive the most amount of traffic. So, you know, L them. But yeah, I mean, it's just something, it's like that graph. The more you F around, the more you're going to find out. And a lot of people today have found out. But yeah. And by the way, when it comes to Starfield coverage, I have a lot of Starfield coverage coming next week. But yeah, we'll move on. You know, I think it's weird because like Starfield has this lot of excitement around it. You know, merchandise in general is selling out. The statue of the robot in the game on the Bethesda store is sold out. I think it costs like £170 or something. It's sold out.
Oh man,
yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah, I only found out about it a few days ago. I would have bought it otherwise. It looks really cool, and like even the journal, the leather-bound journal on Amazon is sold out. The Bethesda store in the UK, and apparently it's sold out in the US as well, is sold out. Now, should I be angry? No. Do I need a leather-bound Starfield journal to play Starfield? No. Do I have a product that's identical but without a Starfield logo on it? Yes. But I still wanted a Starfield journal, you know? It looked really...
need it for reasons.
Yeah, it'll help me review the game, but like it looked really cool. But everything Starfield's selling out to the point where people are making their own Starfield merch and selling it on Etsy. So like Starfield's going to be a huge game. It has a lot of excitement around it, and unfortunately, it's just made a lot of people angry. Like, guess what? I'm a Final Fantasy fan. I didn't get to play Final Fantasy VII when it came out on my Xbox. Like, but people just like get really angry about this stuff, and it just causes people to like be like, I don't know. If you're on Twitter, and if you aren't following us on Twitter, the link's actually in the description down below, where we're talking daily about game and stuff. Like, every single time I post about Starfield, there's some people saying almost every single post, I need to temper my expectations. Microsoft's lying, Bethesda's lying, you shouldn't be excited about this. And I just, like, I'm kind of fed up, you know? I don't understand why it's made so many people angry. Is it because it's exclusive? Were these people like so hyped about Bethesda games beforehand? You know, were these the same people that weren't hyped about Baldur's Gate 3 until they thought it was de facto exclusive to a different platform? And again, it's an endless cycle of BS where it doesn't need to be like this, you know. Unfortunately, it is that way, but hey, I think everyone's going to enjoy Starfield. I'm looking forward to it. Comes out in 3 days. Like, that's really soon. And for a lot of people that haven't gotten, you know, the premium edition upgrade, I've been asked about it today. Excuse me. The premium edition upgrade does actually work for Game Pass subscribers. So I've been asked a few times today. I thought I'd clarify that. We have to talk about this, Logan. The Xbox Series X Pro. It's been a topic that's been brought up for months now. In fact, years. I remember people making clickbait about Pro consoles even before the Xbox Series XS and PlayStation 5 came out. Right? With the AI generated image of a PlayStation 5 where it has like two popped colors instead of one. Uh, the whole question about Pro consoles has been around because Unreal Engine 5 games at the minute have lower performance and lower visuals than people are expecting, although I have a theory about this. And, Gotham Knights was 30 FPS. A Plague Tale Requiem last year was 30 FPS, although now it's 60. And then Immortals of Avium comes out a few days ago, and it's a low resolution of 720p, but it uses FSR upscaling to upscale the image to 4K. And it is noticeable, but they're using a newer technology, the engine isn't optimized, and people are now clamoring again, we need Pro consoles, right? Actually, before I go into my whole theory on the whole thing, like Logan, you've obviously seen all of this. What's your thought on Pro consoles now as opposed to a week ago? Is it the same? Has it changed? Like, what's your thought on the whole Unreal Engine 5 situation?
My thought on pro consoles has consistently been the same and has not changed. I don't think they're necessary. I don't think they're warranted. I don't think they're a smart idea right now when there's already a massive chip shortage. I feel like they're undercooking the hardware they already have right now, and they've got plenty of legs and life in those to work with. And, I feel like I was vindicated when Phil Spencer had his interview with IGN at Gamescom, and he basically said, like, yeah, we have no plans for that. We have no desire or intention to do that right now. It just doesn't make sense for us where we're at right now. So, to me, that, I know some people are like, well, that's just exec speak, and you can spin it, whatever. But, point is, I don't think we're going to see him soon for Xbox.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the whole Unreal Engine thing, that's what's brought the topic up again because people are like, oh, it's obviously a resource-heavy engine, and this is proof that throughout the generation, we're going to need Pro consoles. And I push back against that idea. If anyone in chat listening right now or afterwards, let me know in the comments down below. Like, during the Xbox 360 generation, we had a lot of Unreal Engine 3 games, a lot of Unreal Engine 2 games as well. And early generation games looked terrible. And this wasn't actually just Unreal Engine, it was just the generation in general. Early 360 games look awful. Right? Oblivion from 2006 looks awful. But then you compare it to the same hardware with Skyrim, and it's almost a generational leap within the same generation. GTA 4 and GTA 5, massively different in visuals, same hardware. But now, every time there's a little bit of a performance bump, every time there's something people don't see something they like, we are crying out loud for a PlayStation 4 Pro and an Xbox Series X Pro. We wanting to throw more hardware at a cut that I don't think exists. I think these engines need to be optimized more. A lot of look, the PlayStation 5 was shown off with Unreal Engine 5 before it came out, right? They were pushing that technology, saying, hey, this is what this engine can do. This is a true next generation engine. And by the way, who else has a game out on Unreal Engine 5 on Xbox and PlayStation? Epic. Epic has Fortnite. Now, I don't know if people are like me and they aren't really into first-person shooters or third-person shooters, basically multiplayer. If you fire that game up on an Xbox Series XS or PlayStation 5, that game is bloody gorgeous. And on PC. It's bloody gorgeous. It's 60 FPS, it's a high resolution, and it features ray tracing, plus the latest Unreal Engine features. Why is that? It's because the developers of the engine optimized the game to the best of their knowledge, right? But all of a sudden, we look at Immortals of Avium, which I can't wait to play, by the way. People are looking at that saying, we need a Pro. But nobody's looking at Fortnite and seeing how gorgeous that is, seeing how smooth it runs. Like, Digital Foundry have made multiple videos about it. That game looks and runs amazing. But all of a sudden, we need a 4K, like, 60 FPS Pro. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense. And I think that, like, look, Phil said, like, give developers time to learn the hardware. During the first, year and, let's say, year and 3 months of the console cycle, before the console cycle even started, developers were stuck at home, unable to make games efficiently in the offices they used to. Like, look at Ninja Theory, right? Hellblade was shown off with the Xbox Series X when it was announced in 2019 in December. The pandemic started in, let's say, March, let's just call it. And from then, from March 2020 till I think it was April 2021, all offices were shut. That was them stuck at home where they couldn't make games. And that game's using Unreal Engine 5 or the latest Unreal Engine 5 features. To me, that's them saying, hey, we're optimizing. Every time I've seen the game, it's beautiful. Every time we've seen the game, it's said from Xbox Series X hardware. And nobody's had any complaints about the visuals. But now, because of Immortals of Avium and Lords of the Fallen, which comes out in October, we need to throw a pro console at the situation. I'm sorry, some people don't like it when I bring this up. This isn't like last generation where we had to buy 4K televisions, so we got 4K consoles. It's a different situation. Sony even said that the PlayStation 4 Pro happened because of VR, right? It's just on Xbox, they needed to get a more powerful console to get 4K. They were losing the resolution narrative because there was resolution gate. Every single AAA game that came out, Digital Foundry came out with a video and said, hey, Xbox gets the loss, right? And Microsoft was pushing back with their 4K console. And it worked for them. And throughout the second half of that generation, Microsoft had the better version of every single major game. Every single major game. But now, where developers have been stuck in the house for the longest time, for the most part of a game's development, now we're crying for a pro console. Granted, and bear in mind, as a content creator, I should want a pro console. Videos about hardware get more views. Everyone knows this. But I'm saying we don't need them. Sony doesn't need them. Look at God of War. Look at Ratchet and Clank. We can have games that look better later on in the generation in the same hardware. And I think I think Microsoft and Sony throwing more hardware at the situation is going to create a bigger problem because the engines aren't optimized. And I think throwing more hardware at a situation that it's just going to make things worse. Now, I've been rambling for 10 minutes, Logan. Like, we all know that if this PlayStation 4 Pro does come out next year, gamers are going to do the whole, I want something shiny because they have something shiny thing. Do you think Microsoft will be pressured into releasing new hardware? Or do you think, like me, I honestly think Microsoft will just go back to having a 5-year generation?
I personally think Xbox will stand pat. And I think the Series S and the complications with that and development has just made it to where there's even less of an appetite or desire to add yet another SKU and other stuff to work with. I think that they will try to, eventually max out what they can with these consoles, and then 28, 27, whenever, launch the next gen. I do not see a strong desire or incentive for them to do that. Just because Sony does one, I don't believe they will.
And, we all know what's going to happen, right? Microsoft released the most powerful console of all time, and people, once again, were like, nobody cares about power. And we all know that the second this Pro console comes out, every single game is going to get a test from Digital Foundry. Every single person is going to all of a sudden start claiming that power does matter, and we're going to have the same cycle all over again. But, look, I noticed Hacky Sack mentioned that, look at Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 is so unoptimized on early Unreal Engine 3 that I played that game so many times, I used to know how long it would take for pop-in for certain areas. I used to know that if you played that game on higher difficulties, the frame rate would tank because Rocket Geth Troopers would fire more often, tanking the frame rate. It would drop to like 14 frames per second or something, right? But you go to Mass Effect 2, and what's this? Same hardware, same engine, more optimized engine, and it's a better looking game with better performance. You skip forward to Mass Effect 3, same hardware, same engine, more optimized, and you have an even better looking game with even better performance and even more ambitious when it comes to set pieces, level design, enemies, amount of enemies on screen, because Mass Effect 3 has the most enemies on screen compared to 1 and 2. It has the most diverse amount of enemies on screen at any given time. The levels are more ambitious, the bosses are bigger, there's higher polygon counts on the same bloody hardware. But all of a sudden, no. Because of Immortals of Avium and a few 30 FPS games, we want new shiny hardware. After being stuck in the house for a year and a half when the consoles came out. But no. We need new hardware. And I don't agree with it. Before we continue, we have another super chat by Hackisat for $5. Thank you very much. He says, I've always thought the PS5 Pro would benefit the Series consoles. Third-party devs seem to use the market leader as console performance benchmark. I mean, you're right. But I think the problem is with Microsoft is that they can't win either way. The whole Mass Effect thing. I have a point. You had a point. But when it comes to the market leader, excuse me, the market leader is Sony, right? So if they come out with a 4K, I'm doing air quotes, 8K, 120 FPS performance mode console, oh my god, that makes me cringe so much. That might make developers go, okay, we'll try and squeeze more power out of the X and the S. Fair enough. I think that could happen, but gamers are very fickle. And we all know that the second Sony comes out with more hardware, people are going to be clamoring for Xbox hardware again. And I love all these shiny new graphics. I think Unreal Engine 5 is going to do amazing things this generation. But I think that the performance tanking in certain games and genres right now, it has nothing to do with the hardware. It's engine optimization. Again, why does Fortnite run at 4K, or at least close to 4K, at 60 FPS with ray tracing and Lumen and all of the latest Unreal Engine features? It's because you have developers that know the engine making the best game they possibly can. Hell, I think it even runs Unreal Engine 5 on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 as well. So I don't think, for Xbox, I don't think they need to do new hardware. But I think we can all agree that Microsoft may be pushed to do new hardware. Personally, I think Microsoft should go back to a 5-generation, I keep saying that wrong, a 5-year generation, right? Before the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, generations were about 5 years long. It's just the advent of the economy collapsing worldwide. It pushed Microsoft to extend the life cycle of the 360 with the Kinects, and then pushed Sony to use the PlayStation Move to extend the console generation a few years. And then what happened? We got the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, which was essentially a 7-year generation. I think we have to go to a 5-year generation, give developers time to optimize their engines, make the best games they possibly can, and just, we don't need pro consoles again. Maybe next generation when there's probably eventually 8K television content readily available regularly. But until then, I think it doesn't mean anything. I don't think there's anything at all that could make Microsoft budge. I've been wondering, Logan, do you think moving back to a 5-year console cycle like we used to have would be the right way to go?
Yeah, I think 5 to 7 would be a pretty good bet. It makes sense, and that used to be, back then we would have big shifts every 5 years or so in tech and capabilities, because you remember you have all the Ataris and what they could do, and then you have the NES with 8-bit, and then Super Nintendo 16-bit, and then you've got 32-bit. You got N64. You've got PS1. You've got Xbox game. You get the idea. It was there was big noticeable improvement and jumps every few years, so it made sense to do it every few years. So I don't know. On one hand, I think 5 years makes sense for a cycle, but on the other hand, I'm if they're not anywhere near being able to make a big leap in tech or usage, why have a quote new generation?
You know, I think that the reason I mentioned the whole 5 year generation thing again is because I think there used to be this weird excitement with, like the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, the original Xbox. Like, you knew without really thinking about it, you were going to get 5 years. And then with the 360, like, I remember playing Call of Duty with friends and like Halo with friends, like, late into the 360 generation. I want to say like 2010, 2011. Like, it got to a point like people were thinking like it would be cool to have something new because the like Xbox's like next generation hardware, it was rumored to be at E3 2011, 2012, and then eventually you saw it in 2013. And I think going to this whole 7, 8, 9 year console generation and extended it with a mid gen refresh makes no sense, especially now. And if you look at it, right, let's say they go to a 5 year generation, that means you'd only be waiting an extra year and a half. So, like, I don't understand the whole point. Oh, it's just 2 years almost, but I don't know. I think it's a weird situation Microsoft's been put in, and Sony they've been put themselves in a weirder situation because they're meant to be coming out with a disc driveless, attachable version this year. They have hardware out which they aren't really supporting that much. They have the PlayStation Portable, Portal, which comes out this year. It just seems like it's a lot of hardware in such a short period of time. And then there's the Pro meant to come out next year as well. And I don't know. I just don't like the whole, like, we have all these games coming out, engines need to be optimized more, and we just have lots of hardware talk when it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. But again, this isn't like the 360 generation where the economy collapsed. Well, that's debatable at the minute, especially which country you live in. But yeah, I think it's going to have to be a situation Microsoft they tackle carefully because remember with the Pro consoles last generation they were like, hey, 4K this, 4K that. With these consoles we have now, the marketing was 4K but also 120 frames. Well, how do you advertise a mid-gen refresh this generation when 8K TVs nobody's really adopting? They can't say, hey, this TV, this console, it's more 4K and it does more ray tracing. Even though the console we already sold you advertises ray tracing on the console, it advertises 8K and it also advertises 120 FPS. Like, I don't know how you market a mid-gen refresh this gen. Just putting it out there. Unless there's like some really cool AI, image enhancing thing they come out with, I don't see like how you market a new console, especially a year from now. I just don't get it. But yeah, Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close the show?
Oh, last thing I wanted to say was I'm really excited that Tormented Souls 2 was announced. It was a sequel to a well received horror game from a studio in Chile, and it's basically a 90s esque, Resident Evil and Silent Hill vibes survival horror modernized. And it was really well done. You could tell it was a smaller studio and developer, but the heart was really there in the right place, and the game was good story, characters, gameplay. And now it looks like they're taking it to the next level with a sequel that was announced at Gamescom. Just wanted to throw them a shout about that and say I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just happy there's a renaissance of these indie developers having success with these niche genres.
Yeah, lots of good games coming. Anyway, that's it for today's show. We'll be back at the same time next week. We'll have actually played Starfield by the next show. Got some stuff planned for that. The video I had 2 days ago come out. It's a top 10 biggest games coming out in September 2023. The link is in the description down below. Look, YouTube doesn't do their sharing thing for some reason a lot of the time. But anyway, people seem to enjoy the top lists. Anyway, the link for that's down in the description. Also, our social links for Twitter, or I should say X, by the way, I hate saying that, is also in the description down below. Everyone in chat's been awesome once again. I say it every week. I think we have the best chat here. Everyone's always awesome. There's no one arguing all that stuff. Again, best chat ever. Again, we're back the same time next week. Depending on what day it is, I'm able to get out content for Starfield. I may have my Starfield, I want to call it impressions video, hopefully out by next Sunday. Anyway, we're back the same time next week. Everyone, have a good week. We are out. Peace.